how important is a meeting like the Shangri-La Dialogue for countries like the United States and China, which don't usually maintain regular lines of communication?
Well, given the fact that so many people fear that the United States and China could enter conflict, whether it's over Taiwan or the South China Sea or something else, it's highly significant that the two defense chiefs are able to talk and communicate, and that there are open channels of communication. And I think over the last 7 months or so, we've seen a series of moves to open up those channels of communication, but there's still much work to be done to see whether those channels are meaningful and whether they also reach down into, say, the Eastern Theater Command, which is the command, of course, responsible for most of the Taiwan contingencies that have been rehearsed. But there is room for private dialogue, both in the bilaterals or the side meetings that occur in the hallways of the Shangri-La Hotel there in Singapore.
Now, Taiwan doesn't have an official delegation at the Shangri-La Dialogue because of pressure from China. But given that, how can other countries help Taiwan speak up for the aggression that it's facing from Beijing?
Well, I think as the mainland has tried to cut off ties and strangle the relations that Taiwan has with others, there's been an uptick in in the exchanges with Taiwan. We see this obviously with members of the United States Congress, bipartisan. The House Foreign Affairs Committee, led by Chairman McCall, was there. Senators Sullivan and Duckworth, the two key Republican and Democratic senators on the Senate Armed Services Committee, and many others going through Taiwan, will then be at the Shangri-La Dialogue as well, bringing and raising those issues about Taiwan in the margins of those discussions. I know from the IISS's early negotiations over trying to get more and maybe more official Taiwan participation in Shangri-La Dialogue, because after all, the IISS is a civil society organization, so Taiwan ought to be certainly allowed to address that. But Beijing was adamant that, of course, this was really a precondition for the level of Chinese participation not to have any official Taiwan participation. So the state of art of that has been to try to get unofficial participants from Taiwan so that at least on the margins of Shangri-La, there is some substantive, serious exchanges with Taiwan, even though nothing official on the record.
And one of the biggest events happening at Shangri-La is the keynote speech by Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. What can we expect from his speech?
Well, obviously, the speech by President Marcos is historic because he has a chance to be a real statesman. And I think what we've been surprised about in Washington over the last couple of years is just how much of a statesman he wanted to be. This wasn't just about reversing the legacy of his father. He really wants to be somebody in the history books here who turns the Philippine policy from internal security concerns to external maritime, to helping to play a bigger role. And then you've got, of course, President-elect Prabowo Subianto of Indonesia, who will also be addressing this conference because he's still defense minister. That's also something else to watch. So the two Southeast Asian leaders who are going to be addressing this conference in particular, I think that will be a sign. What way is Southeast Asia heading here in terms of the U.S.-China competition, in terms of how Southeast Asia will safeguard its interests in light of China's assertiveness?